We start with our 72 cents for those who lost their lives in Grenfell tragedy. And can I just remind you to turn your phone? Apologies for absence from Catherine Folks. Declarations. Are there any declarations of interest? Minutes of the previous meeting, and I signed them as a true correct record. Agreed. Can I suggest that right at the beginning of this meeting that we go into closed session, because there are three confidential items, three exact appendices that we need to consider, and I suggest we just do all three of them at the same time before we come back into open meeting. So shall we just go next door? We're streaming our meeting together. Okay, fine. Thank you. Yeah.
Gareth and Callum and Xavier. We have our agenda, so maybe single.
No, it's online.
Okay.
I found that meeting.
I've got this streaming on again. Are we streaming successfully? Can I start the meeting again?
Yes, we are.
Yes, fantastic. Okay. 50 Sloane Avenue, right off of the rears and through Wrench.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a case that is pretty straightforward. I think this has been quite a long saga, and we're very glad to have brought it to an end. We basically had to go to court to get this building back. The person renting it was significant arrears. The good news is we have now finally got it back, and in fact we are generating some significant income from it ourselves, which of course is badly needed. So I think there's a happier ending to what's been quite a long and difficult process.
Yes, and the details and the basis of the claim were in the exempt appendix, which we have already discussed. So I don't think there's anything else that is there anything else we want to discuss in public session that we haven't touched on in our private session?
No.
No, then can we please agree the recommendations to approve the write-off the approved rent? Agreed. Thank you. Please could we go to the next item, agenda 5, which is the Learning Disabilities Housing Parent Support Service and Contract Awards, which are huge. It's an enormous amount of money.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. Yes, this paper seeks approval from the leadership team regarding a contract award for housing care and support services. Obviously, we do this under the Care Act, part of our statutory responsibilities to ensure that people locally can have good accommodation-based outreach services. It's a huge award, £34 million to 4 providers over the next 10 years, which is why it's coming here this evening. But I think we've been really vigorous on it. It was an open tender process that Gareth and the team ran through procurement. I think we've around a really high quality, person-centered aims to get this done. And the new contract aligns directly with our learning disability plan that runs from 2023 to now 2026. I'm happy to take questions if there's any on those.
Emma.
Firstly, thank you to Gareth and team. I know from experience that these procurement contracts are huge and take an awful lot of time and effort. So thank you for that. And really encouraging to see how many tenders you had in as well. That's, sometimes in the past I know we struggled across the council with always only up the same old people. So it's good from a competitive point of view. I just had kind of just nosy questions really. On page 63, it just sets out the number of beds in 4 different sites, which with my maths comes to 42. But I think you also say somewhere else in here that the contract's not just about supporting them in these properties, it's supporting them in their own homes as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so some of what these providers will do is outreach to people in their families. And that might be for a period of time before people are ready to be independently into supported living, but where we can keep people in family homes and support these providers are able to assist with that.
So actually it's wider than just these 4, that money covers these 4 properties, support these 4 locations essentially. And I don't know if you were able to say, obviously it's 42 beds, but we more than 42 people using them over the course of the year. Do you have a sense of how many service users of that provision covers in total, including those people on?
During the course of the year, that number tends to stay stable because these are people's flats, and so unlike a short range provision or like an interim beds, people are usually living it for a significant period of time. So we don't necessarily see that type of churn. What we do have to do is as units have gone through, is to provide the opportunity for people to move back into the borough where, for various reasons, including supply, we had to find placements for them in other areas, which are away from friends and family, and aren't often expensive. So we can make use of that.
So in that case, is it? I'm just trying to understand how many people.
Yeah, exactly. Per capita.
Yeah, it's 42 plus whoever's living in their own homes.
Yes.
So is that 50 or is it 55?
So if you just took the 42, if you're looking for a per capita, across all of those units, we're looking at about £62,000 per year, which is high because it's supported living, and that cost doesn't include the rental costs. So as a comparator, we put about our average cost in residential care and for older people. That's roughly the same price, about £60,000 a year on average there. But in that instance, we're paying the full hotel cost as well as the care. The rationale for the cost here is these are the people who need our care and support the most.
Yeah.
These are people with learning disability, autism, physical disabilities.
Yeah.
And so the costs are always generally high.
I think actually I was just intrigued to know how many there were across the piece. So do you know what the number of service users are that relate to this contract? Because you sort of said it's more than 42.
It is. The actual number of people who will be supported at home will flex across the year. So we'll probably say up to 60. I can get those things.
Thank you.
So, just a quick question. I mean, I know Piper House pretty well, live very close to it, and I can see that we do look after our residents. We really do need a lot of help very well. And so, although you could say, gosh, that's an awful lot of money per person per year, I'm glad you put it into context regarding older people as well in their care homes. But in terms of, as Emma was getting to, about kind of numbers, are there an awful lot of people that still need this level of help, or are we kind of managing to help the majority of people that need this very high level?
There are a high number of people in this level of help, and in lots of good ways, that number is going to increase because more people survive longer as well. And that has an impact on what we're able to provide. So supported living has increasingly been used as a model where we can provide this level of care at high ratios of staff support at the cost we're talking about, but managing our costs down by it not being residential, that we're not paying the accommodation costs on top of that. Therefore, we're able to make some space in our budget to account for that growth that's going to be in demand. Of course, there are always choices and decisions to make there, and primarily when colleagues in our social work teams are working with individuals and their families, often their first preference is to find ways for people to be able to stay at home and live with their families. So we've got a mixed economy, but supported living is probably the largest area of growth because it allows us to do the best value for the group of individuals where those numbers are increasing. And we know from work we've done in terms of our wider accommodations and strategy and intentions for the future, that this is an area where if we are able to grow it locally, would provide values.
And Gav, just to reiterate that, so what we are talking about today is part of what makes our adult social care one of the best in Britain. Absolutely.
Emma and then Sarah.
No, Sarah, go first. Good.
I was just going to ask, you talked about supporting family or supporting residents in their family homes. If in the past people in Amy Garvey were being prepared to move on, perhaps independent living, would the same support be available to them if they move on? Or once they move on, is that it?
Yeah, absolutely. Often in supported living, the answer I gave to Anna's question, these are people's homes that have tenants that live with their long-term living support. But what we sometimes see is supported living still being used as a staging post for people to move on to more independent rental lease accommodation with voting support. And if that were the case in any of these settings, absolutely, it wouldn't just be a kind of cut off and go, particularly for the nature of the cases that were supported and supported living. There will always be a need for input, not only from the council, but from the NHS in terms of
Emma, last question.
Sorry, one last question. On page 63 again, it talks about voids, and so that got me wondering, and I've never misunderstood it in this context. Does it sometimes happen that, very sadly, a person has to go, spends a month in hospital? I assume most of the time these beds at these places are all very full, but do you have voids in situations? And does that, is there a flex in the contract? Because obviously it costs a lot of money to maintain these places, and if someone does whatever, have to go off for a month.
Really good question, and something that the team worked closely with the market on in designing this contract and this model was finding ways for us to have a tight grip contraction in terms of the way that rules are managed. They do occur. Sometimes it's because people are out there on a brilliant time. Sometimes it's because the time between somebody either leaves the accommodation in certain parts of the world and the appropriate next system ready, those timings don't always match up. And often contractually there's a 28-day turnaround before the cost starts to fall to the council. We've put mechanisms in the council to make sure that risk is not shared in the future. The idea is we don't have to do this at all. And some of the social work teams work very closely to make sure that people are but yet something to pay attention to.
So that's something new and that you're managing better now. You think?
It's
tricky.
It's sort of new word and sharpened up. I wouldn't want to sort of suggest that we didn't have.
Yeah, we had it before, we were just looking at it.
We've given it more attention.
Mary? Anything from you? No. I mean, these are statutory services. Yeah. And they are very expensive. The government is cutting money that comes to us. So we have to see what we can do in the future. So I think level these for 10-year period or whatever, because we don't know what our finances will be like.
If I could on that point, the 10-year period is important, and we're seeing other boroughs doing similar resource and categories because it allows us to negotiate better with the market, and it also gives those providers and the staff that we want to work in these services stability, consistent expectations. But we set it out in a 5+3 mechanism, so it gives us room to reconsider as some of the things might.
Yes, I mean, and should some of these cuts come to pass, then we may have to reconsider maybe. So actually the cuts will fall on the most vulnerable. Would be a pity. Thank you. Could we please agree the recommendations on paragraph 2? Social care strategy, proposed relocation of St Mark's Bay. Fantastic. Emma.
Yes, well, it's very appropriate. This paper should follow on from the last one. I think. Oh, no, sorry. Can you wait for everyone to think? Yes, so it seems really appropriate because the focus on our most vulnerable residents in case you can now. Long history again attached to this one. We have for some time wanted to find better accommodation for what are by far and away probably our most vulnerable service users in the whole far as people who are very disabled and whose lives are very challenging. I'll cut to the chase, but essentially after a lot of work we feel we have found the best site, best option to move it to, and one of the advantages of this moving St Mark's to this site at Unit 12 is that we hope we can get it done as quickly as possible as well. Because obviously it's a building that's already existing. And so I'm going to stop there. I don't know if Josh wants to say.
Yeah, no, thank you, Emma. I mean, I agree with everything you say. I think this is a really good news story for our most vulnerable people. I mean, we have been searching for many years to try to have a better property for people with these needs. St Mark's perhaps worked best at the time, but obviously doesn't work now. People have visited that building. But again, the positive thing is it's close by to the current location of St Mark's, really good for service users because obviously they understand the area, staff work up there, etc. Like that. It's accessible, which is really good too. It's on a road, people can park. As they said, the suggested plans at the back, of course, those aren't confirmed or anything like that. But also what we'll do as well, if we approve the proposal tonight, is that we will also consult with those service users and others about the move forward as well. So this is just a kind of a starting gun. But I think it's a really, really positive direction. It's something I think we all should be tremendously proud of because it's been a decade plus, I
11
guess.
years.
Yeah. 11 years of this work. So it has my full support.
I mean, I think it's great. There's a huge amount of work. I just want to read those details about what significant upgrade will look like. I mean, you've got plans, and obviously you have to go and consult. It'd be quite nice to know what you're sort of thinking of in terms of.
Gareth. Six. So I mean, well, that's our set. Sorry, I've gathered before. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things it offers is 2 floors, but previously currently it's 1 floor.
Yes.
In terms of accessibility, St Mark's a pretty narrow road. This has a lot more space for people to park, so people can park and actually go into the property and utilize it.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity as well to update the services that are going to be delivered in there. St Mark's are really old and really difficult to navigate.
It's terrible.
So it's a fantastic new blueprint for people to, refresh in terms of the kind of service that will be delivered from there. It's only 10 minutes from the current location. So again, it's very easy for people to get to and, relocate their cells from where they currently are. And I think one of the things as well, people are going to really appreciate some really quiet area. A lot quieter than currently St Mark's.
Yes, I walked around there the other day to go and take a look. It's 10 minutes walk from St Mark's or 10 minutes drive.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I mean, I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's been a long time coming, so I really look forward to seeing it through it. So then when is it going to happen?
So I think if all goes, if we're agreeing tonight, then there's further work to do to define the exact specification, and we'd be hoping to start in the work later this year.
And so people would relocate this year?
Perhaps early 2027. But yeah,
Thank you. Mary?
If we discussed this, because we were discussing Maxilla, And one of our main concerns, which is addressed by this, is that it should be a single move, not a decant
Yes.
and another move.
Yes.
So I think that's really welcome. And we did also recommend open communication, which obviously is also encapsulated in this paper with the current users. My one thought was that this paper actually, which we didn't discuss because we didn't see this paper, is it in a way it's quite joyless when you reflect on the fact that actually this should be a really wonderful move.
I
And
agree.
it's quite a sort of flat paper. The one thing that did concern me, or at least I want reassurance on, is the fire safety aspect. Because again, talking about addressing it, it sort of talks in rather sort of doer language, which doesn't really give you comfort that the issues that are clearly there in the building now are actually going to be thoroughly addressed, and that there's capacity within the layout to do that.
Fire safety.
That's on page 132.
If we were at the early stages of the design process, so that certainly needs to be looked at more. But so it's recognised that there are additional fire escapes required to the rear of the building, and the fire protection needs to be improved between the ground and first floor. It's we've got very high level indications enough to be able to cost the works at the moment, but in terms of the final design, that's kind of a next stage after this meeting.
I suppose it's just the language really. When it talks about mitigation, it says that proposers are to facilitate more efficient evacuation, and really we just like to know that it's going to be thoroughly safe.
Perhaps I can answer that. And actually, I think you're right. It is a bit dull. I think what's happened here is that with the in being pushed on rightly by your committee, we really wanted to get on with this because it's been such a long time coming, and the need is so urgent for these users. And we really wanted to identify the site and get moving with it. It is all proposed at this stage. We are going to talk to users and residents, although but that's why some of the detail isn't there, because we just wanted to get in agreement in principle and get on with it. But obviously, there's some very important, particularly for this group or for any group, but this group, that everything is just as it should be. So, that's a good point. We can certainly bring another paper further down the line to OSC with updates on it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say as well, Mary, I think this proves the benefit of scrutiny, because when we came to OSC, when we did come to the OSC to say, due to the Westway maintenance issues, this site wasn't going to work out, and the committee was scrutinising us on that, especially the costing and things. The proposals, obviously, the committee put forward not to do multiple moves, not to do a temporary space, not to do anything, and that was really a hard challenge for us because we didn't have a site necessarily that fit all those requests the OSC had. So I think the team worked really, really hard. We worked really hard as well to get it, and I think again, with possibly without that, we would not be in the same position where we are now. So I think obviously thanks to your committee as well for kind of
Well, it certainly seems like it. Thank you, and it seems like a great solution. Just to
Yes, that's right.
I think it's a happy outcome.
Anything else? No? We please read recommendation. Go ahead. It's fantastic.
Great.
Very nice. And I should have said we have actually looked at all the figures, etc. in the accept. Item 7, resident 7, key insights and action plan. Has it? But I think it's great having done this, and we're going to continue to do this sort of thing, because this is just the beginning. So we have comprehensive data over several years. And I thought it was very interesting that we use the 18 questions recommended by the LGA so that we can then compare and contrast ourselves to other people. And when we did that, we looked across London and the country. I think what was it? 15 out of 17 questions, the answers, we were above the national London benchmark. So that gives us some comfort that we are going in the right direction. So what we're asking tonight is for us to review the insights, endorse the action plan and support the proposal with further surveys, which of course we need because we need it over a period, because this is just one snapshot in time. But what we need to do is be able to look at trends. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that before I open it for any comments, insights? Jolly?
Yeah, I think it's really good that we're doing this survey, and I look forward to the results again in future years. I just wanted to draw attention, there's been lots of talk about road maintenance and potholes in recent times, so I took great encouragement from the fact that we're 24 points ahead of the London average for satisfaction in that metric. We've got probably the fewest potholes in London, so that's a really good story for this borough.
Perhaps you could tell that to the government, because they've obviously got correct data.
Quite. And also to highlight what great news it is that in wards such as Pembridge, we have higher satisfaction than almost anywhere else. So it shows that residents in Pembridge really value the fantastic services that we provide, things like our spice bin collections and our street cleaning.
Yeah. Sarah?
I just wanted to say something about the consultation, because I know how difficult it is to get people to respond to our many consultations. And I think it's really important that you did actually, with independent third party, to do some of this, because you really did get across the borough. We didn't just get pockets here and pockets there. I think we've got a much better spread. So I think it's great. I think it's really interesting. Well done.
Emma?
So yeah, really, this is really interesting read actually. And thank you. And obviously, with my parks hat, I'm very happy to see that our Parks and Green Space again so well. And thank you to the team who worked so hard on all of that. And I was intrigued by the high proportion of residents who don't know about the other boroughs. What was your kind of take on that?
Thank you, Councillor. I think that one scenario is that potentially people in this borough, particularly affluent people, are less reliant and come into contact less with the council. But it's certainly something we can look at in a bit more detail. But that would be my
I usually, yeah, I thought the same, but I wondered if you had a similar thought.
It's just, again, it's really interesting reading. And of course, I mean, I think we're all incredibly proud of how beautiful our borough is. And it's really nice that that's recognised. Satisfaction with the local area and a place to live. I think Kensington Chelsea is a fabulous place to live. So that's lovely that that is recognised. But again, at housing, because again, I look after housing. And so with I like the bit that it said that we are managing as a council, our tenants and our residents and our council homes actually feel really well informed, which I think is really good. And in comparing with housing associations, I thought that was good, and that's something we need to build on and work on more. So that was good to hear that you're going in the right direction. Thank you.
Sure. So the ones that stood out to me were services to support young children and and then older people as well, because we're ranked top for adult social care, and we've got a triumvirate of offset ratings for our children. But to see that we're only a few points ahead of London and then only a few more above that for the national, it just makes me wonder sort of, well, in the sort of framing of the question, presumably there's quite a lot of sort of individual sentiment that comes across rather than actually a reflection of the independently assessed quality of our provision. So that then led me on to thinking about where later on we say only 54% of residents who have contacted the council felt that their query was dealt with promptly and efficiently. And of course, we're working really hard to improve that. But it's sort of, they're obviously not identical, but it could simply be that we're actually offering a very good service, but you don't think that the outcome is as good as it actually is. But also very few of these people would have had experience in other boroughs to have that sort of comparative data. So I'm just curious as to why independently assessed top of the country isn't putting us so far ahead of some of our peers.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And my guess, and one of the reasons we've identified, I think, precisely that reason we wanted to explore that question further. I think there are probably slightly different things going on in those two cases. So with children and adults, I think often people hear that question and they read kind of activities for children and adults, or they don't see it through the prism of the kind of statutory provision of social care services. So I think we're not quite comparing like with like there. So that's potentially something to probe. We also have, compared to many other London boroughs, we have a very good landscape of activities as well. Yeah. So, but it may be that those aren't things that people are coming into contact with. On the customer piece, I think that is slightly starker. So I think it does suggest that if you have contacted us recently, it is patchy in terms of whether or not you get good service, with some people very satisfied and some people very dissatisfied. So I would suggest something slightly different going on there. But the question about children and adults won't be something that will resonate with everybody, and it will be something that people interpret slightly differently.
So one thing which I think we shouldn't shy away from is when we talk about the into the council after Grenfell, that people still feel that we haven't changed, but it's the young who feel that more than the adult. What's going on there? Because our commitment to the inquiry was to be the best and to keep changing, keep evolving.
I think that's one of the reasons we've identified that further exploration. It's a question that I think, as you suggested, Councillor Campbell, we've kind of sat with and looked at for some time. I think it is that people, as I said, in relation to customer service, there are still people who have a poor experience and who feel particularly aggrieved about that experience in light of Grenfell. And I do think also people hold us to a higher standard. So we're talking about comparing ourselves with the local authorities, but we also need to think about comparing ourselves to where we were before Grenfell and making sure that we are doing everything we can to address some of those shortcomings.
And we did say that we would hold ourselves to a higher bar.
Yes, and I think this is not directly coming out of the inquiry commitments, but we did make a commitment to look at things like trust in the council in a more systematic way. To Councillor Adam's point, in a more way that looked at a representative sample of residents. So this is part of building a better understanding of where we are as a borough and as a council.
Thank you.
Just quickly, just to tie with the previous two papers. I mean, one of the really stark percentages that comes out in spending savings is 17% of people feel that the council should protect spending on vulnerable residents. And I really feel that we can say that we are doing that as a council, having agreed the previous two papers. So I think we are obviously on the right track in regard to what our residents think. So good to see that.
And just to add to that, that was probably one of the areas where there was greatest agreement, and there were lots of people who didn't answer that question, which I think was interesting in and of itself. It's one we asked specifically because we knew kind of the challenges that we were likely to face in terms of funding. But I think it does suggest that residents don't expect us as a council to shy away from making some of those difficult decisions.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? No. Mary, anything from you, the Can we please for the bigger recommendations in paragraph 2? Brilliant. Thank you very much. Agenda item 8, supporting small business relief scheme. I think this is pretty straightforward, isn't it? Maybe that's just my reading of it.
I was going to save my thanks for the next paper, but as you're here, Mike, I'm going to say thank you. I think this is your last public meeting, and I have to send my apologies last week, but I am here in person now. So I'm going to say thank you for all your years and for running such a tight ship. The next paper you will speak to as well, but it's really been given all that's been going on in local government finances around the country and especially around London. The fact that KNC is able to even manage to deal with the latest round of government cuts means that we've obviously done a lot of good work in the years prior to give us that ability, and that's really down to the work you've done and the team that you've pointed around you. So a big thank you. And on to small businesses. This is one of those papers that I got really excited about when I first saw it coming, because I thought, here's an opportunity to undo some of the harm that Labour government is doing to pubs and hospitalities and hospitality businesses, and having just paid over £8 for a pint in Kensington, Chelsea. I thought this was a golden opportunity, only to find that this is has the veneer of localism, but is in fact just a ministerial diktat. It's essentially, if we deviate from the policy that's put in front of us, we're opening ourselves up to a huge amount of risk. And given we're not able to keep very well, if any, business rates anymore, that would mean adding further to our budgetary pressures. If the government hadn't cut our business rates retention in quite the same way that they've done in the last year, we may have been able to do a little bit more support and look at some of the how far the risk tolerance might have been. But sadly, we are in a position where, in essence, we are passing through business rates directly to the government, and our poor businesses are having to weather the storm. So it's one of those where I think we do have to just accept it, but I'm very disappointed that there's no flexibility afforded to us because we know our businesses and our area best.
Okay, any other comments?
Well, I wasn't really going to ask a question. James wanted to stop. I don't know about the government and the rates policy and the impact that that's having on our businesses in terms of a massive increase. So, and we won't be retaining.
What will we be retaining? Because I think at the moment we raise what, £365 million in business rates in general. Is that right?
376.
376. And how much will we keep?
6.66.
Which is like 1.8%. That means I think it's worth making that point, but not that that's totally relevant to what we're looking at tonight. So, Mary, have you got any questions? I think it's pretty clear that we have to follow the government guidance. As Tim said, the ministerial diktat from high, and are we happy to do so? And can we agree the recommendations in paragraph 2?
Agreed.
Thank you. And now on the revenue and capital, financial monitoring. And can I just echo what Jen was saying? Thank you very much, Mike. I mean, to be able to be here this evening and the general fund revenue budget, the quarter 3 overall forecast nil variance, where all around us, councils are falling like 9 pins. That's, I think this is your legacy, actually, that you've really steered us through some pretty stormy waters and some great shows. And quite often you've given us advice which we didn't want to hear. But you've done, you've just done a really solid, great job. And I think, your legacy will live on, because in the years to come, where we're facing huge challenges, we'll be able to cope in ways which we wouldn't have been able to had you not set the scene and put the foundation in. So thank you very much indeed. And can we please look at what we have in this budget? I mean,
not much more to add. I think it's the same themes as most of these papers, in that children's and adults are really stretched, as well as housing, but the environment and neighbourhoods continues to overperform, which is very fortunate for us. And again, also on our treasury payables and return on investments, which are year on year proving their worth. And it shows what sort of careful management of money can do. This year alone, it's another 1.7 million in our favour. But yes, still some concerns around housing.
Interestingly, there's no money against the cyber attack yet.
So this report is to the end of December.
Right.
The cyber incident.
So there's only in November, so you hadn't been able to add things up.
So we are tracking spend. There's a number of different elements to spend. So there's the spend around immediate aftermath of February and then next to the longer term years. So what we say, right, we start this report is we will bring that part of the outturn to recognising that we will need to fund some of it from reserves. Because obviously we're expected and budgeted for, and we need to make sure we've got that covered.
And thanks to Mike, we have got some results that
Absolutely.
we can use for this.
As once again, as Jen said, housing unfortunately is throwing out a lot of the budget, and thanks to other departments are filling the gap. And this is a factor that's happening all across London. We're not alone in this. But what we are doing, which is excellent compared with other London boroughs, in fact, other urban areas, we're actually managing to reduce the number of our household and temporary accommodation. So the impact we're seeing in this paper here, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, is because it's not in regards to our numbers of households and temporary accommodation. It's because of the cost of finding accommodation in London, renting properties, finding properties is extraordinarily expensive.
So is that because the rental market is growing up?
You are correct, actually, and it is because there's been a lot of fear about the upcoming renters' rights bill, which of course we support for supporting renters, but it's made a lot of landlords actually stop being landlords. I think over 40% has stopped being landlords in
40%.
over 40% in London. So they've either become short-term landlords, which no one really doesn't really benefit our residents who need homes, or they have sold.
I don't think anyone wants to highlight. I mean, we've seen this case quite a lot.
If I may, I'm actually quite pleased because for the first time, because SIP has actually,
I saw that.
and I think, and I just really wanted to actually thank and pay testament to all the work that Christine and the team that she's built up has done. I think it's fair to say we've got quite a lot of turbulence and quite a lot of issues to deal with, and although some of these things are one-off, nonetheless, I think it's a reflection of the much better grip that we have on all of that. And of course, this is income that we are going to desperately need to fill our 100 million black hole. And I think so. I just wanted to flag A, thank you, team, and B, flag that, this, how important that is to be generating this.
As it says, it's significantly achieved and offsets the issues.
As I say, not all of it will be, it'll be bumpy at times, but lumpy, but it's important that we keep focusing on that and trying to generate that.
Yeah. Mary?
Yes, we made our usual granted comments on the act, and particularly dwelling on the sort of overspends, which are saved by the overachievements of income. And just because structurally in the long term, we need to take notice of those. And particularly actually this time, the overspending resources and customer delivery we thought was quite significant and wanted to note. And if you look at the various elements of it, there are some quite big overspends there percentage wise as well. And those are our only comments.
You're right. I think resources and especially customer delivery is something that we do need to look at as we continue to look at transformation of the council.
Most of those are being addressed, so shouldn't carry through into the following year.
Good. Any other comments? No. Okay, thank you very much. Final recommendation.
Sorry.
I can see. I think it's just for noting, isn't it?
Yes.
248. Please can we agree the recommendations on page 248 in paragraph 2? Right. Now we come on to housing management performance reporting. Agenda item 10 to page 341. There's just such a huge stack of papers to see work.
Thank you. So this is the paper which is for information, not decisions, but we take the performance of our housing management team incredibly seriously. It's very important to the council, and following our inspection, we wanted to raise the sharing of the information more amongst our colleagues here in the leadership team. So thank you very much for bringing this. And I think in the report there's actually a lot to be positive about. We have very, very good compliance rates for our major issues, our electricity, our gas, our fire safety, and the big ones. And I was really pleased to see that satisfaction with our estate services are high. And I know we have a little standalone app which all our caretakers and our residents can use to report issues quite quickly, which is going down very well. And again, the repairs come up time and time again. And obviously when your repair's gone wrong, it's a disaster. But in general, 87% of residents are happy with their repairs, which is really, really good to see. And that is analysed by an independent, so I'm correct in saying that, aren't I? we have seen that we do actually, I'm not complacent, we need to improve our complaints process. So that's the kind of the headline figures, and I don't know if you want to ask any questions or if you want to go into more detail.
I think something we want to highlight.
So this report summarises the key performance between October to December, and considering we had a cyber attack in November, and when you look at performance for December, the performance of the housing management team has been phenomenal in terms of having a strong grip on compliance, but also not just on compliance, as I've mentioned, in some areas exceeding the target that had been set.
Which is extraordinary, given that they were dealing with systems which were down and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You silenced us. But I think you really silenced us all, because as you say, in the main report on page 342, you live at high rates of homes with valid electricity safety at 99.71%, gas safety 99.98%, fire risk assessments small 100% compliance, repairs we've talked about, state services satisfaction rates, 80% almost, internal and external. I think that we should really thank staff, and I know, as Sub says, if it's you and your repair hasn't gone well, of course it's really annoying, because sometimes it doesn't just go home. Sorry, it doesn't happen once, but it sort of keeps on going, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Snowballs and things. But the figures speak for themselves, and overall, staff seem to be doing a very, very good job.
Absolutely, and for 43, we've got 6 indicators that are green, 4 that are amber, but 4 that are amber are where we set a 100% target against compliance, because that's what the target should be.
Yes.
But it's very rare.
You either comply or you don't comply.
Yes, but it's very rare that each month we get 100%, because there will always be a level of no access to the gas servicing or electrical servicing. So we want to make sure we've got 100% target, but we also recognise each month logistically it may not always be possible to get 100%.
So on your repairs, since 28,000 down to 24,000, down to 18,000, does that reflect effectively your capital spend? Because I assume our repairs go down, but all the improvements are obviously then in progress. And I just wondered, unfair question, whether or not is there a sort of statistical runway you have on a stack on a stock of houses that's in its useful conditions, that what running rates of repairs would be?
So ordinarily we would expect, as we start delivering the capital programme, the level of responsive repairs will go down.
Which it shows here.
And the capital programme has started before one time. What we are focusing on is making sure the responsive repairs data informs some future capital programme work. So where we're getting particular jobs for roof repairs that's constantly from one particular block, we are trying to prioritise the need to place the roof rather than repair the roof. But generally speaking, the trend would be, as you ramp up your capital programme, the level of responsive repairs should go down.
Yeah. Can I just jump in, because just bringing us back to major works, my favourite kind of pet topic is double glazed windows.
Yes.
And I was on the site today at Allen & Barlow in North Kensington, where we are replacing all the windows there to double glazed. I think almost 500 windows we're replacing. And I went into one of the flats and I spoke to a couple of residents there, and it was really, really great to see that no one likes building works in their home. It's very disruptive. Completely understand that, but in this instance it was amazing. They were replacing windows on both sides of the flat, so they're double aspect flats. So in each flat you can have up to 12 windows, and they were in and out in a day. It was absolutely great, really beautifully finished, and they said there was very little dust and really kept up, so it was really great. And that is going to have a huge impact, because I visited that same stage a year ago when there were single glazed windows and the kids had just gone to school, and you could see the condensation on the bedroom windows, and condensation can lead to damp and mold. And so now, by replacing these windows with our major works programme, it's going to have a huge impact on, as Kim said, the repair call outs and just residents' lives. It's going to be so much better. So anyway, I just want to go, leave that in, link that in.
Let's leave on that happy note. Mary, is there anything?
And reduce their bills, yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Can we please move recommendations in paragraph 2?
Agreed.
Agreed. And finally, repairs to Albert Bridge, the good news story that we are going to, I hope this evening, agree to spend some money to get that bridge back in good working order, and not only just get it back in good working order, but make it better. New lights and things.
Yeah.
Johnny, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the things to say that we know, and we're sorry for how disruptive it is to have a major bridge in London close.
Oh.
And that we want to have the bridge open to motor traffic as soon as possible. That is totally our intention. I think our challenge as members to officers and the engineers that you're working with is to get it open safely as quickly as we possibly can. I think this paper is a big step forward in that work. Obviously, we've been responsible guardians of the bridge for a really long time. We do regular checks. We have a bridge maintenance budget. We've done works in the past, and we've got cyclical works in for this and for Chelsea Bridge in our capital programme already. But I think the paper tonight will help us reopen the bridge sooner. We've got in here repairs to the component that had cracked when we found it earlier this year. And I think also we're hoping, I think tonight, to take the opportunity whilst the bridge is closed to make it even better. It's already London's most beautiful bridge. There are so many good things about it. So things like refurbishment of whole booths, looking at the lighting, and also structurally looking at the surface and making sure that can bear all of the traffic that Albert Bridge might have to take, particularly given that we know vehicles are becoming heavier over time. So, yeah.
To your point about disruption, because I know, because the bridge comes very close to my ward, and when you talk to residents, taking an hour to get across to get home, whereas previously they could live across. Talk to shops in the area, with the butchers saying they're losing a huge amount of trade because it takes people so long to come across. Do you think there's any likelihood that we'll be able to get it repaired in under a year? I mean, I know we've given a long stop, but I think if we could, it would be incredibly, go down incredibly well, because honestly, the queues and the traffic is a nightmare.
I think Johnny said, and we absolutely empathise with effectively. It's what really is. It's unique structure. There's nothing else out there. We've had drones out. We've been ultrasounding the cast iron kind of elements of it. So it's very involved. We think a year is moving at a good pace to get it done. We hope to get all the service back in spring, and we'll absolutely work to get it open as soon as it's possible. And if there's an option that allows us to do that quicker for the year, we will obviously advise and try and progress that.
I think that's the thing. I mean, we welcome everything you're doing, and we especially welcome at the same time that you can put the asphalt down, do the lights, do the toll booths, really make it as beautiful as it can be. Just the practicality of people trying to move across the line.
Mark can talk a little bit about the disruption, but if there is an option that gets it open quicker and it's safe and it's safe we can deliver it, then we absolutely will work with them.
Thank you.
Can you talk a bit, Mark, about the disruption TfL
Yes.
and the
Well, yes, it's certainly going to have to be closed for some time, and I think part of the reason for publishing and producing the traffic order and putting a 12-month figure on it was so that people could, and other boroughs could understand however long it takes. It's not going to be quick, so it's putting it into that kind of time. Absolutely. Anything that we can realistically do to take the load off the bridge and get it open sooner, then we will do that. But in terms of mitigating the traffic impacts, so we're speaking to Wandsworth as well, because they've had it both times now. They've got Wandsworth and Richmond offices together. They've got Hammersmith Bridge closed, and they're seeing a lot of congestion. They get the residents complaining to them on their side of the bridge as well. So between us, we are looking at various options, most of which relate to Transport for London, network or to Transport for London's decisions around how the signals work, for example. So I think there are definitely things that is within TfL's gift that we think would help to mitigate the impacts on the road, and that's what we're asking them to do. I'd say they want to consider the impacts of what.
How long does it take to make a decision?
Well, it's taken a while so far.
Traffic backing up.
No, I think they understand what the traffic impacts are. What they're saying is whatever we do, whatever they would do to change things will have another knock-on impact, which they say that they want to understand. But to be honest, it is a little bit is on their roads where the impacts are being.
Yeah,
it is their roads.
And we will do everything we can to put pressure on them. I know that Johnny's involved in London Tech, and other avenues that we can kind of apply some pressure to try and get some improvement.
I think the fact that we and Wandsworth are of the same mind is
that is helpful. And we know that there are some things that have happened along the embankment in recent years. For example, banned turns on Battersea Bridge and Chelsea Bridge nearby, that we had lobbied against in the first place. And we've raised them at TfL again in light of the bridge closure. And I think it's fair to say we're disappointed that up to now they've said that they think it would be to act in haste to relieve the pressure by reopening those turns. I'm not sure that's the right approach, and I think we want them to reconsider because there is a big traffic impact across our parts of London, and anything that we can do to mitigate that, we need to do whilst we get on with opening this bridge as quickly as we can.
Emma, and then Kim and Josh.
So I'm going to prepare my interest. Not only does this abut my ward, but I use this bridge a lot myself, and probably I'm asked about it by a resident almost every day. I mean, it is significant. So I'm very glad. Thank you for all the work you've done. I know you've all really tried to really get onto this very quickly, and thank you. I'm it's interesting actually. I think you're right to try and do other works at the same time. I'm assuming that you'll think about sequencing. So things like the lights, you'll just get on with that now, because unless it's impacted by the other works, what one would want to see is further delays because you're actually doing the other things that has to be nice to have.
We'll work as far as we can to reduce the overall timeline. And we're having to bring forward the betterment works to stop any further closures.
Exactly. And then I suppose it's interesting as well reading this that the headline is 8.5 million. In fact, only slightly over half of that is actually on the main structural problem. And I wondered, given that obviously you haven't got all the information about all the service and you won't have that yet. And I see you have you put a 25% contingency in there. Are you reasonably confident that? I mean, it's so hard with a bespoke item for a 153-year-old bridge to know whether that feels right. I mean, it's a bit hard, isn't it, really?
I would agree with that bit. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Very difficult to say. And
I guess your level of confidence is what I'm asking you.
Yeah, well, I think we've put in a really hefty contingency.
Yeah.
Element there. But yeah, you're right. Until we know what the design solution is and whether we do a temporary solution to get the road open sooner or not, we can't be really sure. But I think the directors put a hefty contingency for that because of all work.
And the reason we've come forward with this report and not done it after we got the information is to try and speed up the process.
Absolutely.
But let's see what comes out.
Absolutely fine. I think it's just good to have that.
That's the point I made.
Kim.
Yes. So I was really intrigued to read this thing about weight. I remember back. Oh my goodness! When I first came to London, the Albert Bridge had a tidal system on it, where cars were allowed northbound in the morning and southbound in the evening, in order to minimise the impact of weight. And when I look at your graph, and obviously now taking my shoes and socks off to work out the fourth power of square or the square of the weight on each axle, I just wondered, should we be considering another option 4A, i.e. repair the bridge, but not for the volume of traffic that it's currently going to be subjected to, and potentially on your graph get higher wear and tear from in terms of waste?
I think we can take that away, couldn't we? It's not something we've prepared for this meeting. We have had issues around people not climbing the weight limit. So we've got kind of
speed put cameras, people will know to make sure that vehicles over 3.5 tons don't go over there. It is fair to say it contributes to the issue we're seeing. In terms of future restrictions, we haven't modelled that. If we'd like to look at it, we can take that way and come back, I think.
Sorry, you're talking about just having
Making it
northbound or just southbound.
Make it tidal again, i.e. north in the morning, south in the evening.
Yeah.
Which is what it was.
Yeah,
That's what I remember. But although not just that, it's what mitigation that you have because of the impact of weight, which clearly you're demonstrating in this graph.
And I wouldn't want to sit in front of you and tell you what difference that would make in terms of the design, whether it would make it any easier to get the bridge open to allow for just northbound rather than just southbound. What I can say is we've looked at that already in terms of an interim. If we reduced the loading on the bridge in its current state by simply saying it's just northbound only or it's just southbound only, the engineer experts were very clear that the answer to that was no. But if you're asking, could we design the bridge so that it was only taking half the amount of traffic, I'm not sure what difference that would make in terms of the way that the load is distributed. But it's interesting what you said about in the ancient past.
I think that was before they supported it from underneath.
Before the central gears,
Yes,
the
yeah.
70s.
It's
Yeah,
going
it's
back a
about
while
50
back,
years.
yeah.
Supposedly.
When it was still a through suspension for it.
I remember Nanny.
So that would have made a big difference.
And we need to understand traffic impacts, all the partners, and all of those things that would have other impacts.
Horse and carriage. And certainly, Elizabeth's point about the disruption, I think if the bridge was a one-way bridge, it would have, it would be, or people would something to say about that. But it's interesting idea.
Josh.
Yes, and just thank you, Mark. Thank you, Becky. So the crack component is on the north side of the river on the eastern end.
Yes.
Obviously, we checked the other three for that as well. But given that it's obviously a bespoke mechanism, without no doubt we need to go to a foundry of some sort.
Yes.
Is there elements to ensure that the others aren't done? If so, makes fair now, just in case, or that, well, bookkeeper storage or just in case.
So as part of the betterment in option, I think it's option 5, isn't it? That's listed. What we are suggesting is that if there's something that once we've fixed and unseized the sea component in the northeast basin, if we also, with our engineering expertise that we're calling on, identify a way of preventing that part seizing up again, we're recommending doing the same for the other.
For the others, okay. That's
and there's a cost estimate on that, but again, it's
You're right.
a ballpark. Perfect. And on the we're replacing the timber panels with the composite panels.
Yeah.
Will that have an impact on sound? Because at the moment the timber can be quite loud, especially obviously because it's timber. You've got heavy vehicles on it, and it does degrade with the timber anyway, with rain and water and things like that. But yeah, just on that particular element, that improve potentially the sound quality for residents that live around the bridge.
I think it would be quieter just because it'll be a smoother ride. A smoother drive. But and the composite material we're talking about is already on Tower Bridge, so that's a different kind of bridge. It's a lot more traffic on it, so yeah, bring it on that fine. But I'd have to take that away.
Okay.
To the acoustic.
That's fine. Thank you.
I just think this situation has highlighted how important the bridges are, but for so many people that don't live in the borough as well.
Yeah.
And I think our approach to this has been absolutely excellent. Our complete commitment to getting the bridge back working. Really, really, really the complete opposite of what's happened with Hammersmith Bridge and Hammersmith and Fulham. I mean, we all, West Londoners as well, and having that bridge shut, I think has put a lot more traffic on all the other bridges, and including Albert Bridge. And I think it's completely irresponsible when people don't mend their bridges. So I think it's really excellent that we are looking at this, and of course it will take time. As Johnny said, we've already been responsible guardians. So it's in the paper, and it's an excellent paper. Thank you.
Yeah.
Saying that this build This bridge was built 13 years before the motor car was invented. I mean, it's incredible that this beautiful bridge has up to now still been working and will work again. So thank you.
I really want to echo what Sof says. The amount of people who've come up to me and said, "Oh, it'll never open again,"
Yes.
because of the experience of Hammersmith Bridge. Yeah, and I noted, I didn't know this, that Hammersmith only have one bridge, and now they've got none. We've got two, and we're committed to keeping them both open. And that is, this will be so many people will be relieved to just know that. I think so. There has been a lot of concern that it was, be another bridge.
And I think what the paper makes clear in page 9.5, page 8, talking about, who has responsibility for bridges, how we got them, how we have 25% of London's bridge that we're responsible for. And actually, when the London Assembly Transport Committee report London's river crossing bridges in the Thames asked the government to devolve money for us, but, which seems absolutely sensible because one borough shouldn't have to cough up because it's a strategic crossing for London. So have we actually asked either the Department of Transport or TfL how much they're going to contribute towards us fixing this bridge?
Yeah, so we wrote to the Department for Transport about their structures fund. We put down an expression of interest, but I don't think they're accepting applications at the moment. But we wanted to put a marker down so they knew that we would be coming to them once it opens in order to help contribute to the repair and enhancement of the bridge.
Can we note that in our minutes that we feel that the government should contribute because this is a strategic crossing across the Thames, and although in whenever it was when the Greater London Council was disbanded, when was that? About 50 years ago? Yeah, well, they obviously made the wrong decision. Sole responsibility of a single borough council, and the Royal Borough of Kensington, Chelsea, is responsible for 25% strategic crossings in London, and we're practically the smallest borough in the UK. It's insane. So let's ask the government to reconsider about their strategic transport priorities for London and include bridges as one of them.
Can I just ask, under the table 4, there's no mention of Battersea Bridge. Who's responsible?
TfL bridge. Yeah, TfL bridge.
Is it TfL?
Yeah.
So it just goes.
More
confusing, isn't it?
One bridge.
Okay. Mary, anything from you?
Just we had it for pre-decision scrutiny. Thank you very much for getting it to us in time. And there were lots of questions, all of which were answered, so we have no recommendations.
Thank you. Can we then please agree the recommendations in paragraph 2? And thanks, officers, because I know you've been really working so hard on this, because you do appreciate how important it is. So thank you very much.
Comments to Andrew, yes, working.
Yes, easily say to him a really big thank you. But that doesn't mean that we're going to let up on you.
No, I know that.
Keep going on this one because we do want average over. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Thank you. Is there any other business? No. Thank you all very much.
Welcome to town.
There's a double act.